friends, it's Valerie. Welcome back to another week's What's for Dinner. If you're new here, welcome. I would love if you'd hit that subscribe button and join my YouTube family. I put out What's for Dinner videos every Sunday, and this week I have 3 inspirational meals for you and I hope you enjoy them. And one of them is going to be a Mongolian ground beef with broccoli and noodles, and it is delicious. It is probably one of my new favorite meals, so I just wanted to point that out. If that's your type of meal, you should definitely give this a try. It's gonna definitely go into my rotation now. My boyfriend and I both loved it. So let's get started. This first meal is Mongolian ground beef and broccoli noodles. The recipe calls for 4 teaspoons of minced ginger, and I just always keep a root of ginger in the freezer, so I'm just using my little grater here to grate that up, and it's nice and fluffy like snow actually, so it will compact down. So you'll see I kind of compacted it there to show you. So I just did enough to equal about 4 teaspoons of that, maybe a little more because I like ginger. And now I'm taking some garlic cloves. It calls for 6 of them, and I'm just using this little mincing tool here to kind of chop that up into some bigger chunks. And then I'm taking my pound of ground beef and I'm going to go ahead and put that in my large skillet over medium-high heat, and I'm just using my meat chopping tool, and I'm going to begin to just break that up. And then once my meat was less on the pink side, I went ahead and added in my garlic and my ginger, and I'm just going to mix that into the meat, also using my meat chopping tool to keep breaking up that meat more because I don't like big chunks of meat. And once that meat is fully cooked, I'm going to go ahead and use my spatula to push it to one side of the pan and tilt the pan so the grease can go down to one side. And I'm just going to be using a little turkey baster to suck out most of the hot grease. And then what's left, I'm just going to quickly take a napkin, press it down into it to get all the remainder of that. Then this calls for some beef broth, and I'm just making that with some Better Than Bouillon beef and a half a cup of water. Then to that same measuring cup, I'm adding the half a cup of soy sauce. That calls for low sodium soy sauce, so I just use regular soy sauce. And if I need to reduce any salt that this recipe asks for, I'll go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that in, and it also calls for a half a cup of brown sugar. So I'm just going to go ahead and measure that out as well. And I'm just using the same measuring cup as the soy sauce, so I'm spooning it in there as to not contaminate my brown sugar container with soy sauce. And just go ahead and add that right on in, and then it's going to go ahead and ask for, I believe, a half a teaspoon of black pepper, so I went ahead and added that in, as well as a half a teaspoon of red pepper flakes. And then it calls for 6 tablespoons of hoisin sauce, so I'm just going to go ahead and add those 6 tablespoons in there. And then just make sure to go ahead and give that all a good stir. And once that was all combined, I'm just going to go ahead and pour that mixture into my beef and give that all a good stir to incorporate it with the beef, get it all nice and coated. And you're going to let that simmer for a few minutes to go ahead and allow those flavors to absorb into your beef. Next, I just went ahead and brought a large pot of water and salted water to a boil, and the recipe calls for a box of pasta. It doesn't exactly say how much pasta, so I went ahead and just started off with 12 ounces. I tried to read the comments to see what people were using. I actually do believe 14 ounces to even 16 ounces being your normal whole box would work for this, but of course I just did 12 to test it out because I didn't want to waste all that pasta. But I do believe it would work out because I had kind of more meat and sauce ratio than pasta, and if you like more bites of meat than pasta, then 12 ounces would work perfectly for you. But I liked having a little bit, I would like to have a little bit more pasta. So next time I do this, I believe I'll do it with 14 or 16 ounces, the whole box of linguine. So once my pasta was cooked al dente, I went ahead and drained that, and I'm just gonna go ahead and add it into that meat and sauce mixture. I wanted some vegetable, and broccoli sounded amazing with this, so I had some steamable broccoli from Aldi, and I just steamed that up in the microwave really quick, and I'm just gonna go ahead and put that into the pasta, and trying to keep as much moisture out of that broccoli, so you'll end up with, you know, some steam and excess water at the bottom of the bag. Make sure not to get that into your pasta here. You don't want this to be too runny. That sauce is going to actually like get absorbed by the noodles, and it's going to have so much flavor. And I decided to go ahead and cut up some scallions and use some sesame seeds to also top the top of this dish with. I wouldn't skip out on those. They really added a nice flavor. I even believe, I don't know if I got it on camera, but I drizzled some sesame seed oil on this. And let me tell you guys, this is one of my new favorite meals. I was wowed by this. It was absolutely delicious. It tastes like something you'd get at a restaurant or fast food, something like that. And it was phenomenal, and I want to keep that in my rotation of food because we both really, really loved that. This next meal is Crockpot Hawaiian chicken. Alright y'all, so I'm actually going to be halving this recipe because we do not need this much, and I don't want a lot of leftovers of it, but it calls for 3 to 4 chicken breasts. I'm just using 2, place them in the bottom of my crock pot. This also calls for a can of crushed pineapple. I did not have any crushed pineapple, but I had these pineapple chunks to use up, so I'm kind of just taking what I feel is like about half the can since I'm having this, and pouring a little bit of juice, which I regret later. I don't think I'd use any of that juice. It was a little bit runny, and I'm going to go ahead and just add it in my food processing cup and blend it up, and I actually blended it up too much. Then it calls for that sweet honey barbecue sauce, and it calls for a bottle, and I am halving it, so of course I'm just still trying to use only half the bottle, which I found out in the end I didn't use. It looked like it when I was pouring it, but later when it settled down the sides of in my refrigerator, I could see I didn't use enough. And since that pineapple was a little bit too thin, I blended it a little too much. I'm adding some chunks of pineapple so we still have that nice texture, and I thought it'd be really good to have chunks of nice pineapple in there. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and cook this on low for 8 hours. Like 30 minutes before this was done, I made some white rice in my Instant Pot. I just do a 1-to-1 ratio. I add a little bit of salt and butter, and I go ahead and just cook that for 15 minutes and let it rest while I'm just doing whatever else I have to do. And there is that Crockpot recipe right there if you want to get a little sneak peek of how that looked and how juicy it was. And I'm showing you just here how fall apart this chicken is. It is wow fall apart. It just melts. So I'm trying to shred it, but I don't want like too small of chunks, so I'm shredding into some thicker nice chunks. I don't want it too shredded up. I want these to be nice bites of it. And so I'm just gonna go ahead and shred that into some chunky shreds, and then just go ahead and place that back into that liquid in the crock pot and stir it all in with the liquid. And I also made a little slurry of cornstarch because I wanted this to be thicker because the liquid seemed to be too thin for my liking, and it's probably because I used that pineapple and blended it up too much and added the liquid. That's probably what did it for me. So I'm just adding that in there with 1 tablespoon of cornstarch to 1 tablespoon of water, and mixing that all in. And I want to make a note that at this point you should taste that liquid or taste your chicken. It wasn't as sweet as I would have liked it. So either I should have added some more barbecue sauce in right now at this point, or maybe some brown sugar or a little bit of even white sugar just to up that sweetness for my liking. Not that it had no flavor, it needed something more for me. So I'll think a little bit extra of that barbecue sauce or sugar. And I wanted a vegetable on the side with this, so I'm just using this steamable bag of mixed vegetables like broccoli, carrots, and cauliflower that I went ahead and steamed up in the microwave. And I'm just right in the bag. I'm just adding 2 tabs, a little butter here, 2 tablespoons of butter, and I believe a little bit of salt, and maybe no salt, but if you want salt or pepper, just add it in there. And I'm just using my tongs right in the bag, not to dirty another dish, and just gonna go ahead and mix that up, and the steamed up vegetables will go ahead and melt that butter. And I just served that all up. I put a little bit of the Trader Joe's and everything but the bagel seasoning on top of it, and it was pretty good. I would have liked a little bit more sweetness. This last meal is a copycat to Taco Bell's Crunchwrap, and I made some cilantro lime rice. And I'm starting off by making that rice. So to my pot here, I'm just going to go ahead and add a few tablespoons of oil, and then I believe I'm adding about 1.5 cups of rice here. I'm actually not even sure. You can basically do this with any amount of rice that you need. You're just going to double your rice to water ratio. So if you're using a cup of rice, use 2 cups of water. And yeah, so I'm just putting in my rice in that oil, getting it coated, and then I'm just going to go ahead and begin to brown that. And actually, when I was saying water earlier, you're not going to use water. You're going to use chicken broth, or I'm just using water with some bouillon cubes in it. And I'm just using the equivalent to bouillon for the amount of water that I'm using. And once the rice was getting a nice little browned golden color, I'm just going to go ahead and add that chicken bouillon broth into the rice. And I'm just going to go ahead and let that come to a boil, which it already is. And I'm going to place the lid on top, and I'm going to let that cook for about 15 to 20 minutes. And when it's done, I just let it rest for another 10 minutes without lifting the lid. Now I'm just prepping some of the ingredients for the Crunchwrap, which are tomatoes and lettuce. So I'm just going to dice those all up and cut up some lettuce kind of finely into some smaller pieces. And next I'm just taking my large skillet over medium-high heat, and I'm going to go ahead and add in 1 pound of ground beef. And I'm just using my meat tool, like I always do, to go ahead and break that up. And I think I just broke it up a little to start off, and then I let it brown up some. And then once it browns up, I start breaking it up more into some smaller pieces, because as I've mentioned a million times, I do not like big chunks of meat. And then once that's all browned, I'm just going to go ahead and push the meat to the side and tilt my pan to get the grease to one side. I'm using the turkey baster to just get out most of that grease. And whatever's left, I'm not going to spend forever trying to get with things, so I'll just take a quick paper towel to get the last of that grease as much as you want out. I don't like it to be too dry because I want it to still be flavorful and have some moisture. So now I'm just going to take some taco seasoning. You can use a packet of taco seasoning. I'm just using the equivalent to that, which is 4 tablespoons or 1/4 cup of taco seasoning, and mixing that in. And it does seem to be a little dry for me, so I also just got a little bit of water. I didn't really measure it out. I'm just pouring it into my liking. I believe about 1 tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of water until that powder can kind of dissolve and coat all of the meat. Then I gave it a taste, and it just wasn't there for me yet. Like, I'm still going for like that Taco Bell flavored meat, so like I added another small amount of taco seasoning, maybe another tablespoon, and that was perfect in my opinion, as well as a little bit of water again. And I just mixed that up until it was ready. And now that the rice is done, I'm just stirring that up a bit to kind of fluff it up. And you're going to go ahead and add in some cilantro. I'm just using about half a bunch of cilantro here. You can use anywhere from a half a bunch to the whole bunch, just depending how big the bunch is, of course. Extra cilantro never hurt nobody unless you hate cilantro. And in that case, you would either not add it at this point. You could just have like a chicken flavored rice, if that's what you prefer. And I just wanted to mix it up because I feel like I'm always doing Spanish rice, but I do love cilantro lime rice. So I'm also going to go ahead and add the lime and just go ahead and squeeze that in there. Again, you can taste your rice and see how much lime you would prefer to add. I like a lot of lime, so for me a whole lime is great. Of course, it just depends on how much rice you have, so anywhere from a half a lime to the whole lime, and just stir that all up. And now I'm taking these burrito sized tortillas, and I'm gonna go ahead and place a layer of meat in the middle, and I'm kind of just figuring out what is enough to make all my tostadas. And there is the cheese, the con queso there, that I'm going to be using. And so after your layer of meat, you're gonna just put a layer of that salsa con queso. And I'm kind of just making this the shape of what the tostada would be. So you want it to see around there. So you don't want it to be bigger than that. So I just placed that tostada on top of that, and then you're gonna go ahead and just put some sour cream on top of the tostada there. And if you don't like sour cream, or you don't like a lot, just do a thin layer, do whatever you like. I really love sour cream, so I put a good amount there. And then just top that with your lettuce and your diced up tomatoes, and then cheese. I'm adding a different clip in here right now because my very first one I made, I forgot the cheese entirely. So this was another one. Yeah, so I just used whatever cheese I had on hand, which was some Mexican blend cheese, some sharp cheddar cheese. Just use whatever cheese you like, but I do prefer cheddars, and I believe that's what's in the actual crunch wrap. And then you're just gonna fold it over, and you'll see it did not work out for me. My tortilla was still too small. I don't know if my tostada was a little bit on the larger side. I know that they come in some smaller sizes, but it still worked out. See, as you can see here, I took one extra burrito sized tortilla. I just broke that into fours, placed one of those little quarters right in the middle, and I folded right over it, and you never knew, it tasted just as great. In fact, these tasted just like Taco Bell. Anyways, so yeah, just took my little pan here, sprayed it with some oil, and I'm just placing that with those seam sides down. And then once it gets to a nice golden color, you'll turn it over and do the same thing on the other side. And I'm just cutting it open in the middle here, one, so you guys can see it for a photo, and two, because I like to put a lot of sauce inside of it as I'm eating it. So I'm just putting a little serving of that rice there, and there's that beautiful shot of the inside, and it was fabulous. It tasted just like Taco Bell. Maybe it's because I used this Taco Bell mild sauce. I think that made a world of difference. It literally tastes just like Taco Bell. Like, you will not be disappointed if you love that. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future What's for Dinner videos, and I hope you all have an amazing week.